Hello, and 6 months have flown by. We find ourselves in June. I'm recording this on the 20th of June, and I'm going to give my favourite books of the first 6 months so far. Of course, there are still 10, 11, I don't know how many days are in June, but there are still remaining days. However, we're going to take a stab in the dark and say that we're not going to have anything breakthrough. I do have a sore throat right now, so I'm going to try to get through this as efficiently as possible. If you do enjoy, please do like. Please do let me know what your favourite books of the year so far have been as well, whether we have any that match up. It's always fun. Otherwise, I think the most to say is that I think I've read like 70 books this year, which is, firstly, absolutely fucking insane. I think that comes down to a lack of substantial meaning in my life. I'm joking. No, maybe I'm not. With the integration of poetry and audiobooks into my life, it's supplementing a fair bit of that number. And overall, I don't know, I've really hit a rhythm this year. Like, fully 100%. I feel like I'm just sitting down. I feel like I'm really on point with what I'm choosing. I'm allowing myself freedom, and that's really paying off. So what I've done is I've taken 6. At the time when I was planning this, I'd read less than 70 books, so I thought I'd do 10%, 6 books. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to add a 7th one, which is an honorary mention, an honourable mention, which is a convenience store woman by Sayaka Murata. It's a reread, it's a 5-star reread. I read it for the Books and Bow reading favourite books. Anyone who's seen that video or knows me or has watched anything on this channel is probably aware of my love for that book. So I'm not going to go into it, just know that I love it. There's plenty of other places where I've gushed about it. I don't have the book to physically show because I've given it to a friend at the moment to read, hence you can kind of see that this isn't me just looking for clout in terms of saying I like that book, even though I don't think that exists. I've given it out, you know what I mean? So then we'll actually go into it. So I'm not ordering it. I'm a coward. I'm not putting it in a tier. I'm not saying 6 to 1. I'm gonna go in order that I read them. So starting in January, we should have 2 entries from the month of January. So that was a banging start to the year, evidently. That should be where your memory fades a little. There should be a recency bias, but instead, my happy memories. Maybe it's because I was with Grace at the time. I look back with fond regard upon those books. First one is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo, the winner and only winner of the Booker Prize that year. My uni friends and me won a competition, like a quiz thing at Christmas, and we won an Amazon voucher that we all shared equally. Girl, Woman, Other was on offer for like super cheap on Amazon, so we used it to all buy a copy of the book because we knew we would have to do it in 3rd year anyway, and we could read it together. That fell apart. I think like 2 of us have read it, but one of them's me, and I fucking loved it, so who cares? And I do have to, I'm studying next year at uni, so. Girl, Woman, Other functions as, it's split into sections, and it kind of works as an episodic, different short stories around separate women, or non-binary people, or a full variety of characters, just to put it as easily as possible without spoiling anything within the book. And it becomes a kind of interlocking mosaic of these women's lives and stories surrounding it, all centering on their relationships together with other women, and with the country in which the stories are taking place, which is often Britain, and then either telling the story of the emigration to or an emigration away from the country. It's told and it's written in such an interesting new fashion to me. I don't have a copy here to show you. I left it with Grace. I'm going to pick it back up during when I go to see her next. There's a real lyrical flow to the book. It really leads one to another. The way that the stories build and mesh and grow really creates a full, like I said, a mosaic, a full scope of an image of life in Britain. And I think in terms of the goal of the book and the scope of the book that was being strived for, I think really it smashed it. And so I don't think I have any complaints about it. I mean, I gave it 5 stars. I think it was the first 5-star of the year for me. And yeah, it's one of those books that you just like, this is what the author wanted to do, and I cannot critique what they did because it's exactly what they wanted. So that's out of the way. Then the next one I read in January. I had an arc from NetGalley, and I read it because I was actually incredibly hyped for it. Because the moment I read the synopsis, I had read one other book by the author at that time and was like, this is exciting. And I think you can tell the success of reading said arc. Firstly, it's on my favourite books of the year, and I also bought a hardback, which is the super cool one with the name down the side. And that is Yellowfaced by R.F. Kuang. Rebecca, we've changed on the cover. It's only fantasy where you have to initialize your name because men are scoundrels. I have not shut up about this book since I read it. The moment I started reading it, I fell in love. It is so razor sharp, beautifully pieced together to provide just the most fucked up mirror. It's like if the way I describe it is, do you know, like a funhouse mirror? You go as a normal human being, you look into said mirror, and it distorts your features to create abnormal versions of yourself. Instead, this book is the opposite. Book Twitter and the publishing industry and all of that goes up as this distorted, fucked up monster, and it gets put through a prism, and it comes out in just a fucking fire satire. And I was laughing so much through this book. I was physically going, what the fuck, like being just appalled by people's behaviour. But that is so enjoyable to digest and go through. The story follows, I imagine everyone's heard about this. When I read it, I picked it as Yellowface will be this year's my year of rest and relaxation. That kind of fascination with a piece of literature, that kind of thing where it may not even be that year that it comes out, but it will grow and it will fester and it will create that kind of garnering and that kind of not 100% love. It's going to be a very mixed book, I think, in terms of once it inflates from like a kind of this reading circle with which we all exist in and hits that general audience and it catches on and starts getting put on book clubs and all that shit. I think that's where it's going to spark and fucking ignite into a monster. The book follows a white author, kind of middling, released a book. It did okay. And they are friends with superstar, absolute superstar, Athena Liu. When Athena gets her kind of Netflix deal for her series, it's the biggest moment of her career. She invites our main character along, and during the moment of the kind of course of the night, it's just them two alone in the apartment. And after being shown her new manuscripts and everything, which is written out just on a typewriter, Athena dies, and in the kind of clusterfuck of an like aftermath, our narrator takes said manuscript and decides that this story needs to exist, and it would be a disservice if she did not go through it and put it out herself. And yeah, so it just becomes this mess. It's watching a train wreck. It's you cannot help staring at it enthralled, even though you know it's going to be disturbing and the fallout is going to be horrific. You can't take your eyes off it. This is one of those few books that really had me like become aware of the fact that I was holding my breath and that I was just exhilarated and just enthralled. I cannot say enough. I want to reread this soon. I just want to give myself a bit more time away from it. I don't want to just read it too much, but Yellowface is out of this list, joint first with another book. This hits so hard. So yeah, on the bandwagon, that is me. Funnily enough, the other book that is joint with Yellowface is the very next book in the list, which came at the end of February, and that is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, because holy fucking mother god of shit, do I love this book so unbelievably much. This is a memoir. It's a fucking crazy memoir. The idea is that it's told in vignettes, as you can see. It's a very small kind of passages. And what happens is that each of those passages, each of those kind of sections has a rumination on in the dream house. In the dream house, it's the idea that is associated with the concept of a healthy relationship. You strive to be in your dream house, and that dream house has a person in it, and that relationship is part of that dream house for certain people. What it does is it takes literary, philosophical, all of these different concepts, and is so it will be like in the dream house as an idiom, in the dream house as a bildungsroman. It will go through periods of her life and tell instances of her relationship that is, it goes from a place of safety, and a place where you understand how they ended up together, you understand the love and the attraction that they have for each other, and then you feel it change, you feel it mould and shift into an abusive relationship. And it is a very difficult read, it's a very tricky read. It's also one of the best things I've read. This is another that I really want to reread and go through and highlight and shit, because it just does so much. It does so very, very much with conventions and genre and all of these different techniques, and it uses them all as a framing device to tell this really just bare and honest story that if there are two books out of this video that I would 100% recommend, is to hit up Yellowfaced and In the Dream House. Those two are marvels, especially in terms of the writing craft. Yellowfaced is what I would describe as like a very pop pulp, just balls to the wall enjoyment. This is one that you're like, the craft, the absolute craft involved in this is astounding. So that's my next one. Funnily enough, what we've done is we've done the first half being all the literary fiction. So if you're interested in literary fiction, that's it. You've got nothing else coming for you. If you're interested in fantasy and you're thinking, what the fuck, bro? This is just all literary fiction. We're done with that now, and instead we are hitting, for the first 4 months of the year, because I didn't do the last book. I was doing a reread on a read along with Grace on the Discord with everyone of A Song of Ice and Fire, and book 3, A Storm of Swords, is one of my favourite books of all time. I read it a decade ago and I loved it then, and I reread it. Fuck me, is it just astounding, the payoffs that are inside this book. Because the way I view it is that the first 3 books of A Song of Ice and Fire are an arc. I think if you haven't read A Song of Ice and Fire before and you're like, oh, should I read it? Oh, what if he doesn't put out a new book? You just read the first 3 and you can still have one of the best arcs in all of fantasy. A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons kind of resets to then propel towards that ending. But those first 3 as a standalone thing are a marvel of world-building, prose, just character work, creation, incredible. And yeah, I don't want to talk about it too much because it's the 3rd in the series, but George R. R. Martin, there's a reason that he was heralded before the show, and there's a reason that we all are gagging for the conclusion, because it is one of the best fantasy series, without a shadow of a doubt. And there's a reason that when you say stuff like Red Wedding, Purple Wedding, all of these things that all happen in this book, when I was reading it, I conflated so many things that I was like, surely some of this stuff happens in A Feast for Crows or A Dance with Dragons, because there is too much that could be fit in one book, and he does it. And it's one of the greatest things to ever read. So yeah, after that we hit one that I feel like, I don't know how to describe it. It was just, I love this world. It may not be the favourite in the series so far, but I love the world so much that it just all bleeds together, and it has to be there. And that is House of Chains by Stephen Erickson, the 4th book in the Malazan series. I read this last month. I think I read it in May, maybe April, I don't remember. But this is it's just another example of the intricate, expansive scope and world building that is inside Malazan, the way that there are characters that you're introduced to that wrap around and have larger, way more intricate roles than what ever even suggested when they're first in kind of introduced. The poignancy and the kind of magnanimous moments that are given to very small things and the casualness of massive events, I think all creates this feeling of real genuineness of this taking place. Do you know, like, it's the difference between what type of fantasy you're looking for at the time. For instance, if you're reading Brandon Sanderson, you're reading Words of Radiance, you know there is a crescendo, there's a build and a crescendo. You hit the Sanderlanche, you're hitting all your hero moments and everything. And what happens here, like that is also something I love, is that sense of what I describe as an almost superhero-esque fantasy. One of those ones where you have a traditional structure of a build and then a release, you have your hero moments, you get those kind of crowd cheering moments. And here it's like a murkier, muddier thing. Horrific people can do great things and great people could do horrific things in this series. And it's all dealt with in such a way that those moments get the feeling that they deserve no matter who does them. And that creates such a wonderful reading experience of of a genuine societal storytelling. It's the fourth book in the series. Once again, I can't go into specifics, but there are just certain things in this book that build up and pay off, and they pay off in a way that is like a gut punch, and also so casually done that it's one of those ones where a lot of it could deflate. Some of the payoffs in this book could deflate you, and you'd be like, oh. But instead, there's a heaviness to that. Oh, there is a kind of gravity to the idea of, oh, we were building to that, and it just happened, like with no highlighter, nothing pointing out, nothing slashing it into your face. It's just something happening. It's just you have to just let that settle. So yeah, Malazan is a very just an effective piece of storytelling that is just wonderfully intricate, impossible not to love in my opinion. For me, I understand that a lot of people have problems with it, but just I like being lost and I like discovering and theorizing and just on my own. I can't be part of these big discussions about that shit because I don't think that much. I just like to see whatever comes to my mind. So when people are like, on page 237 of the third book, it clearly states, and it's like, oh god. And then saving what could be recency bias. I will not lie to you. I'm gonna have to settle on this. It's the last book I just finished. The sixth book, the last book of the best books so far of 2023 at the end of June is Blade of Dream by Daniel Abraham. The second book in the Kithamal trilogy. So once again, it was an e-arc, I don't have a copy. I had personal mixed thoughts on the first book. I think I gave it 3.25, 3.5 stars purely because I enjoyed some of the world building, I enjoyed some of the especially the magic. I very much enjoyed the magic of the first book, but the main characters, I didn't really find myself drawn to them. And I found them a bit stereotypical in some senses. The second book, however, did everything I loved about the first one. The intricacy, the building, the slow burn. Everything was so slowly built and deserved and kind of melded and grew. And on top of that, fantastic characters. All of the POVs slap so hard, including minor POVs. POVs that kind of follows two main characters. Elena Zal, who is the... well, actually, I don't want to give anything away. But it follows two main characters, and then there's a couple of minor POVs. And one of those POVs, Captain Senate, was such a fascinating character to follow. And that really, like, some of those bits provided reprieves and provided some laughs, some jokes. This felt a much more richly real world because it's the one thing missing. Daniel Abraham, when I read Long Price Quartet, builds such a rich environment of relationships and can do so much to build and break relationships in the fewest words possible. And this book had that, whereas Age of Ash felt a little jilted, and I think that comes down to my personal preference. But I think you'll see a massive difference in the rating between this book and the last, because this one far outshines its predecessor, and I'm now very much looking forward to the last book. I'm going to do a reread of all three. I may make it a read along. However, you know, the price of hardbacks and stuff, I don't want to do a read along that feels like people are being priced out of it. Like you can't pick it up somewhere secondhand. So we'll see about that. I'm going to leave it there because it is recency bias. It may move out, it may shift, but I just really enjoyed reading the book. I finished it and was like, fuck, that was a real good book. I think I've reached the end of the road. My throat is very much it's just sore. So I'm gonna love you and leave you. Please let me know what you've read this year that are the highlights, because I'm always looking to add to the TBR. That never-ending, nebulous void of a TBR. If you did enjoy, please do like and subscribe as well, because we're nearing 2,000. We're inching ever so closer, hence the closely closer. And as always, have a nice rest of your day.